Hi there guys, welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name is Amir Hussein. I'm somebody who loves to talk about research so much so I decided to make YouTube videos just about that. And today is quite a special day because I'm going to be talking about research but in a way that you might be interested in, because you may have seen me on Instagram. If you haven't, check me out over here. I was talking a few weeks ago about me doing a DNA fit test. Now, if you don't know what DNA fit is, it's a company here that specializes in personalized genetic information. So what I mean by that is you take a swab, get some DNA from your cheek, send it to their lab, and they will analyze your genetic profile to see if you're more likely to be more sensitive to carbohydrates or fats, to see what type of fitness program is more beneficial to you, what vitamins you need potentially more of, what is your sleep schedule, how are you more prone to stress, all of these type of parameters that make up you as a person. Because we're all different, we may be more prone to something than another person. So how do we get that information? DNA Test is one of the companies that do just that, as you can see here. Now I'll put in a link in the description of the kit that I decided to purchase and get results on. And all of these videos on for the next 4 videos is going to be me showing you my results. So from my diet type, my nutrient type, my fitness profile, and my sleep and stress schedule essentially. So these are the 4 main bits of information. And each video, this is going to be about diet. Each video is going to be catered around my results from there and a bit of research as to what does each of these parameters mean and what can you take for those of you at home, and maybe shed light on, do you think it's worth it for yourself? But I'll be going through all of this and more throughout this video. So to start off with, you're probably wondering, why did I get the kit in the first place? What motivated me to get something like this? Because it's not cheap. It's around about £150 for the kit that I got. But as a researcher, I always look into the science behind things. So, is it beneficial? Is it credited? Is it well documented? Is it has a substantial backing behind why they're doing it? And somebody like myself is very interested in sports, and I love watching elite athletes, seeing how they train, how they learn. And people like Rio Ferdinand, Greg Rutherford are key ambassadors of DNA Fit, as you can actually see here. And that shed some light on the authenticity, in my opinion, of this type of company and the testing that they do. But all my eggs weren't just in, oh, because these celebrity athletes do it, I should do it. I looked into the research behind what they do. Now, the way these kits work, the way this kind of DNA testing works, is we all have strands of DNA, and all of our DNA is in our body is the same. But what makes a skin cell different to an eye cell, different to your bones, different to your muscles, is certain genes are turned on and certain genes are turned off. And it is this unique sequence of genes on and off that make up the different cells that we have. But going one step further, within the gene now, so you've got DNA, and then each day you've got a set of genes. But within the genes, there can be different variants. Now, the fancy term scientists use is something known as single nucleotide polymorphisms, and SNPs for short, or SNPs for short. And what this means is that these variants that they can identify, maybe somebody may be more likely to be more sensitive to carbohydrates, more sensitive to fats, because they've identified variants that have been documented to have that likelihood. So, for example, you'll see in a minute, there'll be me talking about salt sensitivity. So there are certain variants within certain genes that are related to a person's salt intake, salt absorption, sensitivity to taste of salt. And certain variants are more likely to be, oh, this person has more sensitivity. Other variants, maybe somebody has less sensitivity. So that's kind of a little crash course into the science behind what they do. And to be more rigorous, any variant that they talk about or they use has to be documented at least 3 times in peer-reviewed articles to add some more concrete authenticity and validity to the type of research that they do. So hopefully that gives you an idea as to, it's not somebody that just decided to look at some genes, give you some waffle information. It's actually quite accredited and quite well documented, and that gave me some peace of mind when I decided to buy that course. Now, in terms of disclaimers, you want to bear in mind that this is not a completely full convince, right, follow this summary to the best of my ability, because there are other things outside of your genes that could influence how sensitive you are, how likely you are to something, what your sleep pattern be. There are other environmental factors. And one thing that actually affects your gene expression, not to lose you in terms of the science, is a word called epigenetics. Now, again, that requires a whole another video to talk about. But if you are interested, I'll put some links down below that simply explains what epigenetics is. And it's how what you eat, what you talk about, what you think, your environment, stuff like that. It actually affects how your genes are expressed. Now, you can't change your genes. That's obviously through mutations. I mean, we don't want those generally. But you can change the way the genes are expressed. That's something through known as epigenetics. And the reason why I'm mentioning this now is when you see my results from the test, that might be more prone or less likely to something. That doesn't mean it's set in stone for the rest of my life. Epigenetics can alter the way that my genes are expressed. So even though this test may say something, I can potentially change it through training, through nutrition, over time, that may be more likely to be the opposite of what you see here. So I just wanted to shed that light that this is not a concrete, permanent state of mind from my genetic profile. Another disclaimer I want to share is that use this as a guideline, not as a tick box manual, right? So use it as a good foundation. If you were interested in buying the one of the kits to see, like even ancestry, your nutrition, diet, all of those things I mentioned, use it as a guideline to see, okay, this is what they're showing. Let me try it out. Do I actually feel better? Do I feel better sleeping this way? Do I feel better eating more of this? Do I feel better having this vitamin or not? Do your homework once you get your results and experiment. Be a researcher. Don't do crazy thing testing, but test the results and see how you feel. And then take it from there, I think. But enough of me rambling on about all the little T's and C's. Let's go into the actual results from my diet form of the analysis. So you'll see on the screen my diet report, which looks pretty cool, doesn't it? So I'm going to scroll down through the little few documents that they show you at the start, a little bit about my diet report, the people behind the science, which is quite cool, getting the app, which I might get, which I haven't got yet, and then a breakdown. So this is a breakdown I'm going to be talking about today. Again, I won't be too extensive because I don't want you to fall asleep. But again, diet type, sensitivities to fats and carbohydrates, how quickly I generate toxins in my body. Do I need more cruciferous vegetables, which is really useful for detoxification? My sensitivity to salt, alcohol, even though I don't drink alcohol, but it'd be interesting to see what they say. My sensitivity to caffeine, I don't even drink much caffeine. I know I'm boring, I apologize. I really apologize, but let's see what they say. My bitter taste perception, lactose intolerance, and coeliac predisposition. So, if you are ready, strap yourself in, and we'll go through each of these. Now, if you don't want to stay for the full video, by the way, this is a little bit of a summary as to my results. So I'll leave it there so you can have a look. I'll show the coeliac one. Right, so if you just want to see my results, those are my results. If you want to see what do they mean and my kind of little comments on those, stay tuned for the rest of the video. So, my diet type, which is the next one. As you can see here, let's scroll down and have a look at my diet type. So, according to the results, I need a balanced diet of carbs and fats with protein as the least factor, which is quite interesting. So, according to my genetic kind of makeup, my optimal diet, plain and simple, is again 45% carbs, 30-40 fats, 15 to 25% of protein. Now, this is quite interesting because obviously it looks into my age, weight, gender, physical activity, and particular goals. But I'm somebody who likes to train a lot and I potentially might require more protein. Now, this might be an optimal diet generally if I'm not training, if I just want to look after myself. And I'm going to be now, based on what they say, I'm going to be now experimenting on looking at 2 or 3 weeks worth of me following this versus me following what I was normally following, and I'll see how I feel. Now, obviously, COVID doesn't help in terms of going to the gym and training and seeing my performance, but I'd be interested to try that out and see what comes around. So, again, if you are interested in buying the kit, see what you get, and then let's see if we can compare if we get the same. You know, I'm just curious to see. I am a researcher. I am curious. But let's go into carbohydrate sensitivity. So, according to the results, I have a high sensitivity to carbohydrates. Now, what that essentially means is that I carbohydrates have a more profound effect on me than somebody else who has a low sensitivity. So my insulin may be a lot higher as a result of carbohydrates being more active and more of an effector on me. So attention like diabetes risk, food comas from having too much of carbohydrates, especially the wrong types, is something that may have more effect on me than somebody else who has low sensitivity. Now, as you can read on the right, on the left, sorry, these set of genes are related, and the variations are related to sensitivity to carbohydrates. So, it's the genetic analysis recommending me to have more servings of fruit, starchy vegetables, legumes, and whole grains as a way to utilize that 40% of good carbohydrates. Now, the really good thing is with this type of testing and report is they give you things to consider. So, limit include more unrefined carbs and limit the refined ones, spread the carbohydrates throughout the day. Now, I know you may have questions about intermittent fasting, keto, that type of thing, but we can discuss that towards the end or in a separate video. But here I'm just talking about the analysis of what they've given me. So carbohydrates is actually quite interesting. I have a high sensitivity to carbohydrates. I mean, I need to keep an eye on the refined carbohydrates because they can have a profound effect on me. So I need to make sure make use of the sensitivity by having more unrefined carbohydrates and making use of the goodness and the calories I can get from there without the harmful effects of too much refined sugar from the refined carbohydrates. Right, let's look into fat sensitivity. And believe it or not, I also have a high sensitivity to fats. Now, similar concept in the notion of, again, it's type of fats that you generate, that you eat, especially with the whole boom of ketosis. So looking at keto type foods, which has a lot of backing, a lot of credible sources behind looking at keto in the morning, looking at stuff like bulletproof coffee, having more of a high fat diet. And in terms of detoxification, it is great, and somebody who I admire a lot is Ben Azadi, who's very, really powerful on LinkedIn and talks about a lot of keto camp. He has a keto camp which is predominantly looking at keto. So I don't want to say anything that is not right, and I will say if you've got questions about keto, generally do check him out because he's something I would go through if I was looking into more keto type of understanding. But based on my analysis, again, similar dynamic to the whole make sure it's the type of fats that we are used to or we actually beneficial in terms of avocado, fish oils, again, oils from the fish, not supplements. If you're interested as to why I'm saying that, comment down and I'll tell you why. Get omega-3s from whole foods, not from supplements. Olives, nuts, and seeds. So having more of that is beneficial for me because I have a high sensitivity to that type of fats. And I think that's actually incredibly interesting, is that I can actually make use of more unrefined carbs, of these kind of unsaturated fats, and actually be more beneficial for me, as opposed to looking at the negative, which is, okay, if I eat crisp packaged chocolates and drinks, it's going to be even worse. Let's look at the positive. So that is my sensitivity to fats and carbohydrates. And again, guys, because I want to keep it nice and short, if you've got questions, let me know in the comments. Email me at amit@researchtribe.org, and we look forward to explaining more and more about this summary. Now, looking at toxin generation speed. And what is this is essentially looking at is how quickly do I generate toxins in the body. And believe it or not, I unfortunately have a higher toxin generation speed. And what that essentially means is, as you can see here, I'm at a higher risk of DNA damage. For if I eat certain proteins that are grilled in a certain way, that actually create these type of toxin compounds. Now, I would go with the stretch to say that even kind of frying can generate harmful toxins, which means I'm more prone to DNA damage from higher types of toxin generations scenarios. What I mean by that is, again, smoked or charcoal grilled animal protein, frying, food or even meat. I am more at a deficit if I consume that too often. So it's interesting to see that I'm more at a risk of that, and it's good to know because I generally don't have maybe only have one serving of general red meat, but not in a char grilled or smoked fashion either. So it's good to know that should I for whatever reason develop that, I know that maybe potentially that's quite harmful for me. But leading on to this is actually the next part, which is quite interesting, which is my cruciferous vegetable need. And why I've kept this together in one part of this video is cruciferous vegetables is actually linked to phase 2 detoxification. What I mean by that is it helps to get rid of the toxins that you've generated. That's what phase 2 detoxification looks at. And believe it or not, so my genes that are related to phase 2 detoxification is actually in normal quantities, meaning that there's no need for you to increase your intake, but doing so is also beneficial, you see. So I'm not like at a dangerous level where I'm not good at detoxificating toxins. It seems I've got quite a normal need. So cruciferous vegetables is something, again, I like to be authentic in these videos. It's not something I eat a lot of, but something I genuinely do want to do, even before I'm making this video. So seeing that I could actually increase my detoxification is actually something quite beneficial. And these are the genes and the type of variants that they looked at. So I'd be interested to see those people who have a higher cruciferous vegetable need. Potentially means that maybe their genes are not at normal quantities. So I think that's what I need a higher amount for those who potentially have that. So if you do, let me know, because it'll be interesting to see how that comes about. So in terms of detoxification, my genes are normal quantities, and I don't require an excessive amount of cruciferous vegetables to compensate. But I do need to eat more. That is for sure. Now going into salt sensitivity, I have everything's high in this summary. I have a higher salt sensitivity, and what it means by that is the gene variants I have in my DNA means that I am sensitive to hypertension. So let me just read what it says. Your genetic tests reveal that you have the gene variant which increases your risk of developing salt-sensitive hypertension. So we can recommend that you limit your salt intake. You can achieve this by, again, preparation, keeping an eye on it, not having too much in processed foods as well. So it's interesting to see that, by the way, that this ACE gene is related to the ACE protein. Now, a little fun fact, for those who are pharmacists, you probably tell me as well, a lot of antihypertensive drugs are what we call ACE inhibitors. So they block this protein which is related to this pathway that is related to the whole notion of blood vessel constriction and dilation. So it is clear from this results that I am at a deficit in terms of being more likely to have salt-induced hypertension, so elevated blood pressure due to salt. So I gotta keep an eye on my salt, which is interesting. Okay, something to think about. Let's go on a bit more. Again, by the way, as you can see here, before I do go on, it gives you things to consider. So if you're not well versed in not understanding what to do, this actually gives you some little points and tips. But let's go on further. Alcohol response. Now, as a Muslim, I don't drink alcohol, but I'm actually interested in this because let's just read out what it says. It says, your genetic results show that you may have a tendency to metabolize alcohol more rapidly compared to others. So you may not experience a positive effect from moderate alcohol consumption on your HDL cholesterol. So again, this doesn't have a huge effect on me, but there are a lot of alcohol type compounds in very small quantities in like bread and other things. There are things that we brush our teeth with that might have a bit of alcohol. So obviously for those who drink alcohol, this actually obviously might be clearly beneficial for you, of course. But it's interesting to see that what could my response change because I haven't drank any in my life. I'm just interested to see that what does this show for those who drink excessive, potentially a lot of alcohol in a week or day, compared to somebody who hasn't drank any in their life. And what happens to your genes if you used to drink a lot and now you've stopped? Like for those who, have potentially done so, I'm actually quite fascinated to see, does your alcohol response change because you've stopped drinking for a certain amount of time? But obviously, as you know, I don't drink. So for those who do so, Let me know whether you have a high response and whether you think that is interesting. But I'll go on now to the next one. Caffeine sensitivity. Now, before I scroll down, I don't drink coffee regularly, if at all. Now, I know people have 2, 3 a day. I have probably 2, 3 every 6 months, if I was to be perfectly honest. Because I don't want to be addicted and rely on caffeine as a stimulant, but I do enjoy the taste. I do enjoy the kind of focus you can actually get from having like a double espresso. But fun fact, by the way, when I did have a double espresso one day, I didn't have anything to eat. Obviously, I'm not well versed in caffeine, and I was shivering and like jittering in a presentation. Thankfully, I wasn't presenting; I was just sitting. I had to find and dig deep in my bag to find something to eat because I was about to like faint. And that shows my lack of knowledge on what caffeine does. At that time, this was about 2, 3 years ago. But let's go into my actual sensitivity. According to this, I have a low sensitivity to caffeine, meaning your genetic results indicate that you metabolize caffeine quickly, resulting in you having a lowered sensitivity to caffeine. This suggests you are less prone to the negative effects of a slightly higher caffeine intake. Meaning, I could actually have more caffeine than somebody else and not have detrimental effects. Could this mean that I should start drinking coffee? If you think I should start drinking coffee, more coffee, and what type, let me know. And what blend should I have? Let me know in the comments below because I am considering having more coffee, even before this video and this result. Now that this result come around, I'm gonna have more coffee. Watch me like stay awake for 3 weeks now because I'm gonna have coffee. So that's my caffeine sensitivity. Bitter taste perception. I've not actually read this in super detail, but let's have a look. Your bitter taste perception are non-taster. Based on your genetic results, you are likely to have a normal taste sensitivity and normal response to bitter flavors. This is important as how foods taste influence our individual eating behavior. So, I don't have a super prone sensitivity to bitter tasting foods. I don't know how beneficial this is for me generally, but I know some people find certain foods more bitter. So our ability to taste bitterness is thought to protect us against consuming toxic foods. So that's interesting to know, something I actually didn't know about. But I don't see this playing a huge role in changing my life. But it's something to share, something that you might find beneficial. But I'll go and scroll down a bit further. Lactose intolerance. Lactose intolerance. What does it show about lactose intolerance? Right. So, your genetic results indicate that you have the ability to tolerate lactose, so sugar found in dairy products, as we know, based on obviously the lactate enzyme, which is responsible for the digestion of lactose. Interesting, which is lactose is a sugar from dairy products. So, it's giving me advice obviously how much they contain, and this is actually quite interesting because I would say I'm a bit more sensitive to full fat milk than semi-skimmed milk. And I think you understand what that means. And it's interesting to see that from my genetic analysis, I'm more tolerant. So I'm interested to see what further research is there around about. Could there be other genes that are related to intolerance that obviously are not analyzed here? This is what I mean by looking at it as an all-encompassing test, not that, okay, based on what it says I'm going to do. Because as a researcher, I can understand other angles. So there could be that there are other genes in play that are not tested here. That could be the reason why I'm more intolerant to full fat milk. Again, not huge amounts, but just in some capacity compared to semi-skimmed milk. So that's again a lesson for you to think about if you are to purchase the kit and try it out. Just to bear in mind, again, this is not looking at every single gene, but it is looking at a majority, which is incredible to think of, right? Let's go a bit further down. Coeliac predisposition. So coeliac disease, as we know, is related to the adverse reaction to gluten, which is found in a lot of wheat, barley, rye, and grains, which you may or not know. According to coeliac predisposition, I have a raised risk of developing coeliac disease. So I am, again, according to what you're saying, it's similar. It's not the same as gluten intolerance, but this immune-related disorder, according to what you're saying, have a higher risk of developing it. So again, as it reads here, your variants indicate that you can continue including foods containing gluten like wheat, rye, and barley with caution. So it means that I can still take it. I'm not going to be too scared to not take anything, but I just have to be more cautious than the average person for something like celiac disease, which is interesting because it's not something that I've thought about a great deal, and who would generally. But this summary and this analysis gives you more understanding about yourself that you probably didn't know about. So again, to reiterate, I have a raised risk, but there's many things that I can do in the meantime to mitigate that risk. So according to the gene table on the right hand side, we've tested different HLA genes, and they play a role in helping your immune system distinguish between self and non-self in the small intestines. So this is related to so immune response and immune reactions within your small intestines, where the immune system there can't recognize what is its own and what is something foreign. That's related to celiac disease, but I don't want to delve in further and lose you on this. But it's interesting to see that something I didn't know about, I'm more susceptible to it. But there's things, as it says here, that I can do to mitigate that risk. So that is a quick summary of my diet type. Now there is all the vitamin breakdown, which is going to be the next video, part 2. There'll be a whole fitness breakdown, and that is about what type of fitness regime should I have, my muscle mass susceptibility, all of these things which you can see here are related to the fitness type. And then the sleep and stress, resilience, and parameters. So that's actually quite interesting to see, and that will be part 4. So I'm going to try my best to get them out Thursday and Sunday. So this Thursday will be part 2. Next Sunday will be part 3, and then the following Thursday will be part 4. So if you've got any questions about the kit, about the research behind it, about why did you choose it, feel free to comment in the section below, and I will be happy, more than happy, superly duperly happy to answer your questions. And if you haven't subscribed, now I'm being serious, like if you haven't subscribed, I suggest doing so. Because you know why? Should I tell you why? It would be beneficial for me in the channel. And I think I hope to reach 100 subscribers soon. So if you can do so, that would be a super duper help. And I would genuinely really appreciate it, because I genuinely want to share like research from stuff like this that I've tried and tested and sharing my results. But as you know from a previous video, I'll be sharing stuff around about life lessons from a PhD and PhD advice for research students. However, I won't keep it too long. I hope you enjoyed our video today. I have timestamped everything, so if you want to go back and re-see what you saw on the screen, you're more than happy to do so. I will decide soon whether to share this PDF so you can have a read if you wanted to, because there's nothing personal generally that I see that is of issue. So if you wanted to have a read, if I'm allowed to as well, so I'm going to read DNA Fit's terms and conditions. If I'm allowed to share this for educational purposes, I will do. So if I can do that, I will link it in the description box. But if you want to have a chat with me about it, feel free. But in any case, hope you have a great day and you have a nice set for the week ahead, because as you know, you're going to have part 2, 3 and 4 with this video. So take care, and hope to see you in part 2.